Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the GOAP online conference. So again, I would like to invite everyone to please participate in different channels that we have prepared for you. We have the GOAP WeChat group, the GOAP Global Slack, and then if you would like to avail of the Chinese interpreting, feel free to scan the code on flashing on the screen right now. So to kick things off, may I please invite Steve Chu, the founder of GoAP, to please start things off with an opening remarks.
Good afternoon. Good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to our GoAP event today. I want to thank everyone for taking their time to join us today. So I want to begin by, first of all, making a couple of announcements. We will be hosting our annual conference later this year. The date is tentatively set for December 7th and 8th. And we had at one point internally discussed hosting this conference in Shanghai. Then, of course, the pandemic began. We talked about hosting this event in Singapore, in Australia, and we have finally made a decision that our annual conference will be held virtually. So this will be a full-on annual conference. The exact format and the call for paper will be sent out shortly via an announcement, but please mark the date. I just want to touch very briefly GoAP's mission. GoAP, the Glocalization Organization of Asia Pacific, was founded to facilitate a few missions. And I want to focus specifically, in the interest of time, on number 3. One of the things that we want to do is to help Asian companies with their entry into the European, North American, and international markets, as well as number 5, to help foster partnership and support for European companies, North American companies, and companies everywhere else who are interested in doing business in Asia. That's really what GoAP is founded for. And I'm glad that with the timing of the call today at 3 p.m. Beijing time, which works out very, very well for our European friends, industry friends. So we have actually quite a big contingency of not only people from Asia, but also from Europe represented here today. I'm actually based in New York, so it's a wonderful 3 a.m. in the morning for me. So very, very early morning. And with that, I'd like to turn it back to Shelley.
Thank you very much, Steve. Again, we have a few reminders for everyone for the course of this online conference. As you can see on your screen, we would like to request everyone to mute your line until the end of the presentations, and then after which we will have a question and answer. You can direct your questions for our speakers through our chats here in Zoom, or you can also use the one from WeChat. Steve will be monitoring that. And then if you have some questions on Slack, feel free to drop them off. So we can follow this format. Example, you have some questions for Sara Maria or Steve, you can just put in there questions for Sara Maria and then throw in your questions. So for the interest of time, we wouldn't have enough to go through the bios of the speakers, but I am posting it here on our chat group. So you can click on the link and check on the bios of our distinguished panel of resources for today. So again, join the group GoAP group in WeChat, and then the online community in Slack. And then if you're looking for Chinese interpreters, scan the QR code here, brought to us by our partners in Akadu. And of course, we would like everyone to know that this event is also live streamed by our partners from Master Translation in China. So Steve, can you go on to our next slide, please? And of course, this event will not be possible if it weren't for our sponsors and partners at GoAP. So shout out to Treehouse Technology, Hansem, Pix Roller, Technographia, NTS, of course, Women in Localization, Kudo, TransN, Acado, Inui, Creative People, and Montero Language Services. So before we kick things off with the official conference, we would like to ask a few questions for you guys. Everyone here in our conference feel free to participate. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are across the world. So Steve, can you pop up our poll, please? Yes, so here we have a couple of questions. So we would like to invite everyone to participate on this very quick poll. So I guess I'm gonna give it a minute or two for everyone to participate. Actually, I'm participating right now. Okay. So basically, we have three questions. First one is asking the nature of your business, where your company is based, and then, oh, it's actually two. Sorry, my bad. I thought it was three. So first one, nature of your business, and then where your company is based. So it could either be translation, interpretation, both, product, technology company, freelance interpreter or translator, members of the academe, and others. So basically, you just put in there if you're from China, Southeast Asia, other parts of Asia, from the Middle East, and then Northern Europe, Southern Europe, Western Europe, United States, the Americas, or if we have participants here from South America, send them in. So I hope everyone had time to participate in our poll. Steve, I think you can pop it out now. Thank you very much for that. I guess we now have to kick off with our conference proper. So we have 7 distinguished members of our panel who give talks in remote work during and after COVID. So let's start the ball rolling with the presentation from Sara Maria of Meridian Linguistics. Feel free to unmute yourself and pop up your screen.
Thank you so much for having me. So are you going to switch the hosting to me?
Yep, Steve, can you please help us facilitate that?
Oh, I might be able to already do it, actually.
Okay.
You should be able to. Sarah, go ahead and try.
Okay. Okay, so you can see my screen and not my notes, right?
Yep, go ahead, Sarah.
Great. Okay. So yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Really wish we could have been all meeting up in Shanghai or somewhere else, but this is great too. Don't have to get, don't have to put on pants. So very happy to be here and to see some familiar names. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarah Maria. I'm the founder of Meridian Linguistics. We specialize in Asian language data and in linguistic consulting. And since I've spent close to the last decade living in this part of the world in Asia, I'm going to help answer some questions about what it's like to work in Asia during and post-COVID-19, if there is indeed a post-COVID-19. So like I said, I've spent the last 7 years in Asia. This picture is from a beautiful city in China called Suzhou, where I was last week. And most of the time I'm actually in Beijing. Before that, I was based in Korea for 6 years. And for most of my time here in Asia, I was actually traveling a lot for work. So I spent a lot of time in particular in Japan, Indonesia, and Hong Kong. Now, of course, I haven't left China for many, many months now, as you might imagine, since the borders are closed here. But I do keep very close tabs on all of my colleagues and clients in all their varying locations throughout Asia. And they've been keeping me up to date on what life is like over there. So I thought that I would share everything that I know with you. I'm going to go through a few quick snapshots of a few Asian countries, give you an overall sense of what life is like and what challenges they're facing, especially as they return to the office and as they try to close new international deals while borders are closed, all the new challenges that we're dealing with. And then I will go through some interesting new technology trends as well, which pose a lot of opportunities for those of you in the language services industry, and especially in this region in Asia. So first of all, how well will Asia adapt to the new normal? This new world in which travel is restricted, a lot of people are working from home, that's going to depend on several factors. First of all, the containability of the coronavirus crisis, of course. So can these countries eradicate the virus through lockdown or through contact tracing, or are they going to have to wait for a vaccine like the US and Europe likely will? Actually, many countries in Asia are looking like they might have a shot at containability. It's really optimistic to see. We're really optimistic to see this. And that's going to position them very well for getting back to work and to normal life and welcoming back global business and creating more work for language service companies. Of course, the impact on the economy, that's going to be huge. And international mobility. Many of the countries that we're going to talk about today, many of the countries here in Asia have closed their borders, and that will affect whether foreign workers can come home, whether new deals can be made with people coming in from overseas. That's going to have a big effect on global business as well. And finally, the ability to adjust and adopt new technology. That's going to be so important for how Asia does in these next few years. Asia is actually a really exciting place when it comes to technology, but every country approaches innovation slightly differently. So we're going to dig into that a bit. So let's go through some country snapshots. I'm going to get you situated. Many of you are already in Asia or you're very familiar with Asia, but you could definitely be forgiven for not closely following the situation of other Asian countries. There's plenty for you to keep track of right where you are, I'm sure. But Asia is obviously a very, very diverse region. There's lots of trends that run through a lot of these countries, but there are also differences, especially in technology adoption and in societal responses to the crisis. So I'll talk about that. I'll also talk a bit about travel and border restrictions because this has a lot of bearing upon the losses that are going to be sustained due to restrictions on global business. So some global business, right now we're living in this very virtual world, but some business still does need boots on the ground and can't be done virtually due to regulatory issues or manufacturing issues, lots of different reasons. So I'm not going to be able to talk about every Asian country. I wish I had time, but feel free to ask me questions in Slack if you feel like I'm missing anything particularly important, or if you are able to chime in with your own experiences. I would love to hear about that. I'm sure we would all love to hear about that. So let us know what's important for people outside your country to know about what it's like doing business in your country in this special time. So let's kick it off with mainland China. That's where I am right now. We are mostly back to normal here after sheltering in place for about 2 months. It really varied throughout the different regions of China how strict the lockdown was, especially for Wuhan, which was under very strict lockdown for several months. However, things are mostly back to normal now, but the borders are closed. So other than Chinese nationals, no non-residents can enter China right now. And even many Chinese nationals are having trouble getting back. In fact, I think there might be a few people attending the conference today that are in that situation, that are stuck in the US. So I hope you guys are doing okay. So China may actually open up a small travel bubble soon with Korea and Singapore. Actually, right now, I know it's starting just for businessmen, for business people. They are able to get visas to travel throughout this little travel bubble. And we're hoping that will soon be extended to tourist visas as well. That will be huge in stimulating global business here in Asia again. But one of the most interesting things, in my opinion, for the future of our world is that, unlike many other countries, full containment is actually looking like it's possible here in China at this point. We're now down to a few hundred cases. So we may actually be able to reach New Zealand's level of success. New Zealand recently eradicated the virus, although I think just yesterday they did have one case pop back up. But it's still very hopeful. The only question is what we do or how sustainable that is once the borders are reopened. But this will have very interesting ramifications on China's ability to do global business as they potentially come out of this while their competitors are still grappling with the virus. So when I say that we're back to normal, I mean that we're able to return to the office, we're able to go to restaurants, more or less. But many people actually have chosen not to take advantage of those liberties. A lot of people are just choosing to stay inside and stay safe until we know more. So many companies have decided to extend work from home measures until they're really sure that it's safe, especially because China has very strict rules on the workplace right now, especially with respect to the responsibilities that companies have towards their employees during this crisis and what happens if their employees get sick. But one fun thing is that the government is actually encouraging companies to offer 2.5-day weekends, 2.5-day weekends, in order to stimulate the economy. So if your Chinese colleagues are taking a while to respond to you on a Monday morning, then you'll know why. But we're very optimistic right now, although the reality for the near future is that we're probably going to experience cycles of tightening and loosening. Indeed, right now in Beijing, we're experiencing another small outbreak, so we're taking a lot of precautions again. So let's pivot to India. India has been hit pretty hard by this crisis, and as a major hub for a lot of call centers, a lot of IT, this is going to have a ripple effect throughout our industry as well as many others. So here is the timeline. On March 22nd to June 1st, it's been on pretty strict lockdown with enforced curfews. The borders are also still closed to foreign non-residents. India has been praised by the WHO for a very thorough and robust coronavirus response, especially because that lockdown was very strict. But of course, this is going to have significant economic ramifications on the country, so it's always a trade-off. And like China, even though many Indian professionals can return to the office, they're actually still choosing to work from home. In fact, India's largest software company, one of their largest companies at all, overall, Tata, will have 75% of their employees working from home by 2025. So this is a huge deal. This is indicative of a larger trend in Asia in which we see companies planning for the long term, not just temporary responses to coronavirus, but many Asian companies are seeing COVID-19 as indicative of similar dangers that could be coming around the bend. And they've experienced coronaviruses before as well. So they now want to prepare by shifting to work from home potentially permanently and investing in technology that will allow for virtual communication. So that's something that we language professionals should be very aware of. So let's shift back to East Asia and talk about Korea. Does anyone know what this is a picture of? I'm just looking at the chat to see if anyone wants to throw in. Yes, I knew it would take 0.5 seconds. Great. This has been so incredibly interesting to see. South Korea is so creative and innovative and has really demonstrated that since the beginning of this crisis. So not just in inventing drive-through testing and contact tracing with text message alerts to let you know if you came near someone who was infected, but also in terms of just what they did when they sheltered at home. So I thought I'd try to throw in one little fun thing in the midst of all this doom. But this is just one example. Dalgona's coffee it's a recipe that you can do yourself. It's Instagrammable and it's spread like wildfire throughout Asian social media. Even American and European Instagrammers are doing it. So I just thought it was a great example of how creative Koreans have been throughout this. They also, I mentioned contact tracing before. Koreans did this so effectively that they never had to have a mandatory lockdown. So they did ask people to volunteer to stay at home, and enough people did that so that they never had to force enough people to do it. So that has really helped Korea's economy to stay afloat. However, Koreans were hit really hard by MERS a few years ago, a different coronavirus. So people did take COVID-19 really seriously, and many people did choose to work from home, and many offices immediately prepared for that to happen. But from what I hear, a lot of my friends and colleagues are back at the office, and I bet we're going to see waves of loosening and tightening in Korea as we have in China. In terms of travel, Korea is only restricting Japanese and Chinese passport holders. Everyone else can come in, they just have to quarantine for 14 days. So this is Korea's way of keeping the virus out. But the fact that they're still allowing a lot of foreign professionals to come in physically into Korea was definitely going to give them a leg up when compared to other Asian countries, the other countries that have an absolute ban on entering foreigners. But the Korean government is definitely preparing for coronavirus to be a long-term situation. In fact, they released a document with recommendations for post-COVID behavior, which included moving meetings and conferences to an online format for the foreseeable future. So that should be really interesting to our colleagues here who are working in remote simultaneous interpreting. And we should look out for potential trends like that in other Asian countries as well. Okay, let's switch to Japan. So the beginning of the coronavirus crisis in Japan is still a bit murky due to not very much testing, but and potentially some wishful thinking with respect to the Olympics, which did eventually have to get very painfully postponed, which I know affected a lot of people here. Under the law, under Japanese law, lockdowns were not possible, but they did ask everyone to stay home voluntarily. And then they did end up closing schools, suspending large gatherings, as well as including the Olympics. So Japan seems to be doing a little better now, but still people are working from home. They're preferring to stay home, which poses some challenges because of a lack of proper technology, ironically. A lot of Japanese offices still rely on fax machines, and Japanese homes don't tend to have fax machines. Apparently, Japanese society really prefers to separate their work and their home life. They keep that very separate. And although, of course, many of my Japanese colleagues will agree with me that pretty much work just is their life, but this creates some difficulties as they try to shift the office into their home. They are also implementing travel restrictions that's based on previous travel, not based on passport. So that's how they keep people out. And they're also adjusting to some difficulties with a new way of working with this, which is without the oversight of having their bosses looking over their shoulder. If any of you have ever worked in a Korean or a Japanese office, you've probably seen the familiar sight of employees at their desks just with their head down, sleeping in the middle of the day or sleeping at the end of the day because they're waiting for their boss to go home before they can go home. It's definitely a societal or a cultural thing that the Japanese and the Koreans really like to judge their productivity based on hours that they're sitting in an office chair. And that's definitely not the way they're going to do it while they're working from home. So that's going to be a big change for them.
Sarah,
Okay, let's pivot. Yep.
I'm giving you 2 more minutes to wrap it up.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's pivot quickly to Taiwan. I'm going to move a little bit faster. Taiwan has been a really impressive case. They have been widely praised for their coronavirus response, which didn't involve any lockdown, just really intensive contact tracing with GPS monitors and pretty strict enforcement, which was actually surprising to many, even nationals inside the country, because Taiwanese are very protective of their privacy and of their civil liberties. But in this case, it really worked out. Oh. Sorry, what did I just do here? Yes, okay, good. Okay, so really on Taiwan closed their borders, they barred most foreign nationals from entering the country. And with that and with the contact tracing, they were able to avoid mass lockdown. So as a result, Taiwan's economy has not been hit very hard in comparison with the rest of Asia. So, but the question here, as with a lot of these countries, is how do they negotiate the trade-off of opening their borders while avoiding internal lockdowns? And so that's going to be a tough question to answer. And one more really interesting thing about Taiwan is that because they didn't have to institute a lockdown, remote work was never really widely adopted. So whereas in every other Asian country we see a huge shift to remote work, everyone in Taiwan is still pretty much living their lives as normal. So my friends and my colleagues in Taiwan say that day-to-day life doesn't feel very different from before. It's just really bizarre to know that outside their borders, this virus is raging. Okay, so now we're going to quickly talk about some technology trends. I just want to give you a quick sense of what the internet looks like in Asia, because there's actually a huge range of internet speeds and penetration throughout Asia. And I won't have time to talk too much about this. I better hurry along. But I just want to point out, here's the US, here in the middle, or kind of close to the end, actually. But Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, and South Korea have both very high internet speeds and also very high internet penetration. So these countries over here are going to fare very well in this next stage of adapting to virtual work. Another really interesting technology trend to see is voice technology. So as we shift towards contactless and touchless interactions in order to avoid spreading infection, voice technology and AI is stepping in. So in Asia, governments are promoting or even spearheading initiatives to switch to voice technology. This is a really interesting opportunity for language service providers if you're well equipped to provide language technology services. So you'll see here, China is promoting AI applications. Korean cinemas are using it for ticket booths. I was just in a conference this morning, actually, where a Japanese voice designer pointed out that usage of Alexa is skyrocketing in Japan. So this is really, really interesting. Another thing to consider is that as we move to working from home and move to virtual environments, Asian countries are going to be reacting to issues of regulation and compliance in different ways. So we saw that India was loosening some regulations on IT workers to make it easier to work from home. But I'm also guessing that we're going to see a lot of countries becoming stricter with voice over internet protocol. Also, companies are going to have to be a little bit more strategic about the platforms that they're using and whether they're comfortable with who owns the data for those platforms. So I just want to reiterate what I've said now and many times in other presentations that you might have heard if you've seen me talk before. But compared to forecasts for the West, Asia is actually looking like one of the safer places to be these days, and it's looking like a region with very exciting prospects, at least for the next few years. So several of the countries that I mentioned are actually very close to containing the virus, which may not happen in the Americas or in Europe until a vaccine can be found. And partly this is because Asia has already had experience with coronaviruses. It was able to act quickly, and maybe partially for cultural, political reasons, but really, I hesitate to paint the region in such broad swaths because the countries that I talked about today have very different political systems and very different cultures, even though they're all part of the same geographical region. But anyway, for those of you in Asia or doing business with Asia, I think this is really good news, right? We can be glad that we're already in this area, we're already developing expertise and networks in this region, and that we're going to be very well poised, I think, to take on the challenges of the next few years. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for coming. I tried to pack in a ton in a little bit of time, but please feel free to reach out to me on social media or on the Slack channel. I'll be lurking there to answer all the questions. So please stay safe, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I'm looking forward to the rest of the event.
Thank you very much, Sarah. We'd like to request you to stay around for a bit for the question and answer portion later. And it was a very informative presentations, like to see how the other countries are doing compared to what we are doing. So thank you very much for that presentation. And I would just like to segue here in the group chat. I can see some issues with the interpretation. So if anyone else is still having issues with the interpretation, so feel free to drop in the message and we'll have it sorted out for you. So as of now, we have 81 participants. So again, hello everyone from across the globe. I hope you're doing fine. Have a drink, coffee, tea, or maybe something stronger. So in segue, after that talk from Sarah Marie, I guess we have to proceed now to our second speaker, Gloria Lee, of the localization. Yep, Gloria, are you there? Can you please unmute yourself?
Hi. Yes. Hi.
Okay. So I'm giving the floor to you now. Feel free to share in your screen and start your presentation anytime you're ready.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Okay. So let me see. Okay. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, my name is Gloria, and I am a CEO and founder of Glocalize. Glocalize has a vision of where we bring the world together by empowering stories. And we are located in Korea, South Korea, where Sarah Maria has explained very well about COVID-19 situation. Thank you. And we are also located in Hollywood, USA, and Singapore. I am here actually as a representing the Women in Localization. So the Women in Localization is a group of men and women in localization industry, and with the under one mission to foster a global community for the advancement of women and the localization industry. We are located in 22 different global locations and expanding, and we have more than 5,000 current members in the organization. So just briefly talk about our my presentation today is getting the organization culture in remote setting. So my topic will be remotely working, closely syncing. So culture, what the heck is culture? So I have to start with the definition, and a lot of people define culture in many different ways. So to me, and for Glocalize, culture is an environment where our common sense within the organization of making decisions and behave such ways are well understood and accepted. So with such common sense decisions and behaviors, we feel cared, informed, and belonged. So this is the ideal and healthy culture in Glocalize's definition. And we are, of course, still working towards to making this ideal and fairly achievable culture at Glocalize. Okay, so I mentioned this is the common sense, the environment of common sense, and the definition of common sense may not be common for everyone. So setting up this, what is the common sense to the same level among people, among group, among juniors and seniors is the key to the healthy culture. And it's important that these common senses are set up not by other people or on Google, but by our people in the organization, and how we want to work and how we want to communicate and how we want to feel cared, informed, and understood. And of course, we at Glocalize is also building the common sense, and we org the common sense since more aggressively since the COVID-19. As Sarah has mentioned, from the very beginning of March, when COVID hit Korea, we have turned our entire company into remote environment. So everyone had to forcefully to work from home for like a month. And after that, we were, since our office were open, we gave them a little bit of freeway because we had lots of members who were not fully ready to work remotely at home with their kids and families. So we had to open half and half. So in the regards of creating this common sense together, yes, sometimes we need, some of peer pressure is needed, like turning on cameras for conference calls. So working remotely is, I also have to think about what is really working remotely. Is it physically remotely or spiritually remotely? Of course, during the COVID-19, the remote setting here means physically apart from each other. But I feel like we're still working together online, like most other companies. I'm sure a lot of companies, unless it really needs ground meetings, a lot of people still work online. And many companies may work in the same space, in the same office, but actually working remotely. So if you're working spiritually remote, then you feel lonely and remote, even though you're working with someone else next to you. So I had to think through, is working remotely is the challenge, or how we used to work is the challenge? And I also had to think about myself where, okay, working remotely, we are mentioning, oh, this is too challenging to work remotely. Especially when you feel lonely, when you feel not connected, when you feel like the communication is blocked. But if we think through, I don't know if that is 100% on physically remote, or it's just how we used to work and how we used to communicate within the organization may have some challenges and issues before it just came up more apparently with the COVID-19. So with our current culture, I'm of course referring Glocalize. How does working remotely play? I couldn't say it worked out pretty well, because physically working remotely is actually a really challenging, because we had to change the way we used to work. And also, but at the same time, it is a great way to reflect yourself. The largest questions that we had to ask ourselves was, am I self-motivated and self-manageable person? And if not, what support or environment do I need? So these two were the questions that we asked everyone. And about 60 people, about 60% of people were replied that they may not be as self-manageable person as they thought before COVID-19. And the most of the questions, replies that they feel they struggled the most was they felt lonely. They felt lonely alone. And of course, the kids, we had some family, dads and moms here who has little kids running around. And of course, Korea, we had to postpone the start of the semesters for like a month. So they all had to stay home. And even so now, some schools are doing online classes. So they had to stay at one house. So that was another challenge. So it could be really truly remote working issue, but we had to deal with both physically and spiritually challenging issues when when we work remotely. However, we thought it's a fundamental question for all the companies, whether you're physically apart or spiritually apart from your team. I think we have to go to basic and focus on trust, collaboration, and self-development, or self-motivated. So point here is working remotely or not remotely, we have to work together with the same purpose and goals like all companies, whether they're remote or not remote. And I'm sure everyone's goal is very in common in this default common goals of a company is keep good work performance, effective results, and happy people. So based on these three, we had to focus what can we achieve and how can we escape from really defining are we remote or not remote, but actually focus on our relationship, whether we're together or not. So of course, as I mentioned, with kids and home setting not fully ready, of course, we need a little bit of online touch and a set of some different rules where we had to come up with 4 different systems. So the first was a communication system where we are fully ready for cameras and conference calls with a great internet speed, microphone, and nice cameras. And of course, it could be Hangout or Zoom. The technical side, it has to be ready. And we also prepare some little fun where you can use the tags. So when we have a large group of people, we use these cards. I don't know if you can see it, like as a kudos. And we also made like this like fun, like laughing tags. So this is just a little different reactions we had to take because you cannot physically show your face every time when someone is presenting or when you talk, it's interrupted. So we just show like this faces. We have lots of cards like that. Sometimes it takes time to choose which one to show. And then we also reorganize all of our Slack channels to make it more transparent. Before it was more like team-based Slack channels. Right now it's project-based or theme-based channels. So everyone is open to all the communications. If they want to join, they can always jump themselves to join the projects. So it's much better transparent and everyone is informed in the same way at the same time. And also we try to encourage people to react more when there is a group message or when there is a group announcement. Before it was more like nodding and just okay, but then now because everything is online, they put like emoticons and all the reactions. They also put their like pictures or GIF to show lots of reaction that I got your message or some of the responses to the message. So that was one of 4 systems we had to change a little bit. And the second one is support system. We have created the environment setting for remote setting, just like I mentioned, with people who have kids at home, we had to support financially with with them for getting a private office, like a WeWork, or where you can share offices, or also we can support the coffee cost when you visit cafe pretty much every day. So we have a certain amount of money that we are contributing to people to make sure they have all the support they need to find the best work setting that they need. Of course, the offices are now open, and since we are working at WeWork, we have great spaces, and we can spread out to find a small place to work by themselves.
Gloria, I'm giving you 2 more minutes to wrap things up.
Okay, thank you. And third one is collaboration system. Before it was a lot of ad hoc meetings and put everything on in a meeting notes in a Google or Docs, but now everything is on one place. We use Notion in an organized way. And also we created 5C rules where every project, every big, I would say, task, we need to have 5Cs: clear intentions with context, clear process and expected output, clear responsibilities, like who's taking what, clear timeline, and clear feedback and retro. So with the why and how we did and retro, this full cycle of 5Cs of a project really create the synergy and communication seamlessly, even you are working remotely. The last system is recognition. We are opening kudos online, one Slack channel. We share all of our kudos, and it's open, and usually we encourage people to kudos openly when feedback is more privately. And we also have a point system, like an online game. We can give like Hey Taco, and we can shoot some of the points to your colleagues for the people who you want to express appreciation. So my conclusion is, with your company's culture and common sense, what is your definition of working remotely? Really, like, you have to look through, instead of just putting every issues that you see on working remote, maybe you might want to have to rethink what is your company culture and what is your ideal company culture that you want to achieve, and what kind of people do you have in your organization, and then what is this the really issue related to working remotely? So to find this solution, you don't have to look outside, but look inside. Your own colleagues, your own team, your unique combinations of people and environment to set the culture that you want to nudge. So then your team or your company will be working in sync, remote or not remote. So the working remote setting or not remote setting can be out of equation soon. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. I personally think that we are at least very lucky to be in an industry wherein shifting from physical office to remote work is a little bit easier compared to other industries. So even here at the QWERTY Works, all of our teams are in-house, and then when the COVID hit, so everybody went remote, but it's important to keep up the team spirit. And every 3 p.m., we usually have the brain game, and everyone else in the team gets competitive. And right now, I can't join because I am at this conference, and they're probably already at question number 15 of the brain game. So again, thank you very much, Gloria, for that talk. And if anyone else wants to share how you guys are doing remotely, or how you guys are team bonding, feel free to drop it in our Slack or here at our Zoom or WeChat channel. So thank you very much again, Gloria, for your talk. And with that, we will gonna thread it to the rise of outsourced project management. The talk with that will be given by the founder of GOAP and the person you hosting this Zoom meeting or Zoom conference, Steve Chu. So Steve, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Shelley. I am back again. I think the topic of my presentation is rather fitting, the end of employees. As I mentioned at the top of our conference, I am based out of New York, so I'm really enjoying this lockdown so far. We went into lockdown, it's been 2 months, and many of the industry friends and coworkers and even neighbors that I'm speaking with are talking about how they may not be returning to the office anytime soon. And in fact, some companies are thinking that they may not ever be back in the office. So pre-COVID-19, businesses around the world are already moving towards a virtual model that uses more contractors. And that's just been the trend that we're seeing across the globe. The pandemic of COVID-19 merely has accelerated that trend. So COVID-19 did not cause this to happen, but it certainly has played a significant role in accelerating this process. And we're not talking about just people working from home. We're talking about companies shifting their employment model. One of the large management consulting companies, Accenture, predicts that in 5 or 6 years, a large company, we're talking about a large Fortune 500 company in the world, will have no employees at all outside of the C-suite. Okay. So a rather bold prediction, and sort of the futuristic prediction. And whether that will be true or not remains to be seen, but certainly it's trending in that direction. So what is the difference? I think we're hearing a lot of different terms about offsite, onsite, outsourcing, and offshoring, right? And many of us today are connecting remotely from home, from our home office, including myself. And so we are, in fact, talking about a couple of different concepts intermingled. The on-site, of course, we're talking about working inside a company's physical location. And Treehouse Strategy, my own management consulting company, is an interesting example in which we never had a physical headquarters. Our company of about 10 people have always been decentralized without a centralized headquarters. Right, all across the world. We have people in Taiwan, in South America, as well as in Europe. And so offsite obviously means, which is what almost all of us are doing right now, which is to be working from a remote location, usually a home office. And outsourcing means that you are hiring an outside company or an outside consultant or contractor to do the work that would otherwise be performed internally. Okay, so just to keep those terms straight. And finally, the offshoring. Companies are beginning to shift their knowledge base, or it used to be the outsourcing of menial tasks or administrative tasks, right? But companies are beginning to shift knowledge-based jobs and positions to other firms in another country. And this began with IT, information technology, with programming, with customer service. And more we're seeing the offshoring of critical functions in the language industry, and specifically in project management, and which is one of the central themes that I'm talking about today. So what are the trends in outsourcing and offshoring, right? Outsourcing, again, is the hiring of outside help, and offshoring is shifting that work to a different country. It used to be that only big companies, big corporations are in the position to do outsourcing because they have the scale, but the world is trending to smaller companies and even sole proprietors, meaning very small companies of 2 or 3 people, outsourcing and offshoring their work. The outsourcing and offshoring also used to be very low level, right? Menial tasks, administrative tasks, and more, the world is trending towards the offshoring and outsourcing of knowledge-based work. That includes project management, certainly translation that we're all already familiar with. The workforce has also gone from being low-skilled to knowledge-based. So offshoring is no longer just limited to the realm of low-skilled workers. And again, the offshoring used to be something that only big corporations with a lot of work with large scale so that could afford to do, or it would make sense only for big corporations to do, for them to achieve economy of scale. But smaller companies now with platforms and smartphones and apps are now able to outsource and also offshore, even a single task, right? There are many platforms such as Upwork that enable small companies to offshore even a very small task. And technology has really enabled that transformation. So what can be outsourced? Outsourcing began with big corporations, but has moved to small companies. And with the gig economies, the companies that outsource are getting smaller, and the tasks are also getting smaller, right? And mailroom and office cleaning, cafeteria used to be the type of work that was outsourced. And then we move into manufacturing, IT, accounting. And now even things such as marketing, sales, operations and productions, as well as project management can all now be outsourced and offshored. And we are, in fact, from the many companies that we talk to in the language and localization industry, this is in fact one of the trends that we're seeing, that translation language companies are beginning to outsource their project management. And not only are they outsourcing it, they're also offshoring it to a different country. So what are the advantages? Most people think of cost savings as the first thing that comes to mind when companies outsource or offshore anything. And in fact, from our experience, we are seeing that companies can realize 30 to 50% cost savings. We, however, would argue that there are far greater benefits than just cost savings. There's increased flexibility. There are many countries or states, jurisdictions that have very, very difficult and tough employment laws. Some countries in Europe, for example, the state of California in the US is notorious for its tough labor laws. So flexibility is one thing that companies that outsource or offshore could help realize that benefit. Access to greater talent pool, that is something that many companies struggle with, to find good quality people. And certainly when you outsource and offshore to a different country, you have greater access to the talent pool. And of course, that's a double-edged sword, right? Time zone can be a challenge, another one of those double-edged sword things. But if you're looking for coverage for different time zones, offshoring to a different country can in fact be a benefit. So traditionally, people like to, or companies like to think of outsourced project management as only appropriate in situations in which the project managers are doing behind the scene work, meaning that they're not interacting with the clients. We are also seeing that changing. More companies that we work with, clients that we work with that outsource, are beginning to allow their outsourced project managers to be in client-facing capacities. And some are even serving in larger roles with more responsibilities, and such as managing large accounts, program management capacities. So it's no longer the case that the outsourced project managers are doing low-level work. They're in fact engaged in revenue producing and client-facing capacities. So we get asked a lot, when you offshore to a different country, how do you begin? You could certainly try to hire overseas employees directly or offshore directly. And it's difficult to speak to how to go about doing that, given just how widely diverse of a sort of the audience that we have, depending on what country. The labor laws vary drastically from one country to the next. Even in the US, it could vary drastically from one state to the next. So definitely check with the experts, lawyers who are familiar and well-versed with labor laws, both in your own country as well as the target countries. There are professional employer organizations known as PEO. They specialize in helping companies that do this sort of offshoring and outsourcing. So that's one approach you could take. Another approach you could take, the third one, is that you could partner with a similar company in another country. And we know many language companies are doing, in fact, just that, if they choose not to go through a third-party intermediary. So with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. My contact information is on this slide. You could also find me on social media, and I look forward to talking with everybody during Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. You are 4 minutes ahead of schedule. So thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. So I actually agree that the remote setup may not be for everybody. So they have to check in with their local laws and labor codes and see if the remote setup works for them. So right now, we have 104 participants in this Zoom call. So again, hello to our newcomers. So earlier we did a poll that has two questions. One asking what industry are you from, and the second one which country. So Steve is now flashing the results of the poll. So we pretty much have a diverse group of audience here, from translation companies, interpretation companies, both, and then freelancers, members of the academe, and others. And then most of our participants are from China, and then other parts of Asia. Then we do have from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, United States. So I guess it's United Nations. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So thank you very much, Steve, for sharing the results. I guess we do have another poll for you. Can you please pull that up for me? Second poll. So we're encouraging our 103 strong participants to join in and answer our poll. Steve, can you pull up the poll for me?
Yes, give me one quick second.
Okay. So again, if you do have questions for our previous presenters, feel free to drop them at our Zoom chat or at the WeChat or on our Slack channels. So go send them a lot of questions, ask a lot of questions. Okay, here it is. Oops. Where did it go?
This is
I
the
think
first.
it's,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it's the first one.
Mhm.
So if anyone else has problem with the interpretation or having difficulties, can also let us know and we'll have it sorted out for you. And somebody asked here if the presentations will be available. Sara Maria already dropped her link. You can check it out on the group chat, and then we'll provide the rest of the links for the presentation after this conference. It may take a few days, or we will give them to you as soon as we are able. So here it is now, our second set of polls. So first question is, how has COVID-19 impacted your company or your business or your work as a freelancer, translator, or interpreter? And then the second one is, after COVID-19 public health crisis is under control, different options here, if you would have your team return to the office or consider remote work or a combination of both. This may depend on the situations in your country. So feel free to choose here which one is applicable for you as an individual or for you as a company. So, okay, we'll give it another 30 seconds for everyone to digest the question.
Yeah, actually, I have a question. I was like for Steve, like, what do you think like after the COVID-19 and what should the business translation company do, and also during the COVID-19 and what should we do? Do you have any suggestion for us?
Wow, the $1 million question.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, that's a great question. Why don't we, if we could just put that question along during the Q&A?
Yes.
Also, just thereby giving me a few minutes to think about how to respond.
Okay, great.
Okay, I think we have 4 more speakers, and then maybe they'll touch on that, and then after which we can throw in again your question and have everyone answer it. Does that sound okay?
Okay, great.
Okay, so right now we're gonna move on to our next speaker. This is actually quite related to the question thrown in just now. It's on disaster recovery of language businesses and in the language industry as a whole. So I'm giving the floor now to Makis from Creative People to start his talk.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chrysostomos Psaroudakis. It's short named after Makis, which is faster and easier to pronounce. I'm head of Creative People in Greece and Britain. Creative People is an IT managed service provider covering business IT support maintenance and IT defense needs. Creative People has a strong R&D background that comes from its involvement with NATO and EU-funded research and development projects on the security and electronic warfare areas. This know-how is transferred on our customer infrastructures in the need of providing creative IT solutions that protect and work proactively for our customers. I'm here today to pinpoint some key points we should not forget regarding disaster recovery and especially IT-related disaster recoveries. Disaster recovery in general is a hot potato during the corona times, as COVID-19 put all our plans into a stress test. Disaster recovery is the core of any business continuity plan, and as the incident involves, is the most important part of the procedure of getting back to business. All business continuity plans define the purpose, the scope, and the objectives of the plan. They also pinpoint how people or departments, internal or external, interact with each other. They define resource requirements and the information flow, along with tasks to be done under certain circumstances. All those should be documented so as not to lose time when the disaster happens. Imagine you're living the disaster. Unless you're lucky luck, you should not think of how you will do it. You should act by following steps and then evaluate what you did. The main elements of a recovery plan are the responsibilities, the sequence and the description of the tasks, the resources we are going to use, who must be notified and when, all the contact information for all parties involved in this plan, the recovery steps for critical and crucial activities, and the minimum acceptable result of each step and of the plan as a whole. Every step has its own recovery time objective. We often call this RTO. The faster we can recover, the better it is. Time is always against us, and especially in crisis times. Now, one of the biggest challenges with the disaster recovery plans, it's a definition of it. There's actually no fixed recipe. They're only guidelines. You have to customize your disaster recovery plan according to the business nature and tailor it to your actual needs. This means that you must complete a business impact analysis in which you should identify which business processes are critical. Think of and identify as many tough situations as possible that should be covered in your plan. Ensure that you're covering everything you need to include, not everything you have. Everything means cost, and a higher cost can make a disaster recovery plan fail. You definitely don't want this to happen, especially while on crisis. To tell you the truth, disaster recovery planning is a job for business owners, not just employees, not just consultants or ITs. You have to take for granted that you cannot have it all. You need to think of this as a rope game. You win some, you lose some. You gain in functionality, you lose in cost or RTO. Management, with the help of its employees, need to identify which risks the organization is going to mitigate. Is it going to be an IT system outage? Is it going to be a fire? Is it going to be a burglary or a COVID-19 outbreak? Last but not least, the biggest of all challenges in all the above scenarios we have is one common parameter: the people. Personnel is the biggest challenge for any plan, not only disaster recovery plans. Is it going to be a human mistake? Is it going to be a violation? Let's take a look on it. Human mistakes increase as we're not focused or not paying attention to detail. Work from home is tough. I assume you experienced it. Personnel unavailability is an issue, and anxiety plus frustration bring up more and more mistakes. A 2019 report from Verizon calculated that 32% of data breaches involve phishing. This means that those data breaches were resulted after people being tricked. Phishing or phishing, whatever you call it, is clearly a human mistake. And during the coronavirus times, we had a lot. Why? Because people don't pay attention to detail. We're trying to do everything fast, so to get back to what they were doing or babysit their children. It's human. Right in the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak in Greece, we put our customers to a test. We ourselves sent out a phishing mail to more than 2,000 users pretending to be the Greek Ministry of Health. The outcome of the test was that more than 20% were tricked and clicked on the link that took them on our website where directions on how to avoid out directions were given. During the COVID-19 times until now, unfortunately, we have a daily increase of 210% in attacks of all kinds against our customers' infrastructures. Phishing emails reception has increased by 150%. Ransomware incidents increased by 133%. Unfortunately, there are too many enemies, and they have a lot of weapons. Most of the time, successful attacks end to system lockdown. Ransomware attacking our files and lead to denial of service on our own systems. How to do it, how to manage it, be alert, engage people, make them care, and understand how important this is. Every business continuity plan and disaster recovery plan needs its heroes, but it's not always the information and technology people. It's also the ones who fund those plans and moreover take the decision to put a line on what will be served and what will not. In the alike scenario of an emergency, just like the COVID-19 times, combined with a data loss or a breach. Creative people and I are at your disposal to discuss, put in place, and test a disaster recovery plan that will suit your needs. Thank you very much for your time. Stay safe, stay sane.
Thank you very much, Makis. So, you you actually beat Steve's record. You've we have at least 7 minutes time left. But thank you very much for that presentation. Yours, Steve, yours is, you have four minutes left. Makis had 7 minutes left. So let's see if the other speakers could beat that too. I've actually had an interesting conversation with a friend yesterday. He said that this coronavirus did not make the system vulnerable, but it actually exposed how vulnerable our system is. It could either be the government or your company, and it actually tests how much we are capable of preparing and doing the recovery. So I guess that's a whole bunch of different topic to dive into, but thank you very much, Makis, for your presentation
Thank
once
you.
again. And if you guys have questions, feel free to drop them in on our different channels, and we'll go back later to that question thrown in on how the $1 million question and how we're going to survive during and after the disaster. So I guess that leaves us to our next presenter from the impact of COVID-19 on China's remote simultaneous interpretation industry, from our representative from ACADU, Alvaro Montoya. The floor is yours. Feel free to unmute yourself and start your presentation. I think we can't hear you. Can you? No, we can't hear you. Or am I the only one who can't hear Alvaro?
No, can't hear.
Can you guys hear my voice?
Yes, now we can hear you.
You can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. The floor is all yours.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen then and show my presentation. Um, okay. So hello everyone. My name is Alvaro. I am from ACADU, and I'm going to talk about the COVID-19 impact on the remote simultaneous interpretation industry in China. We are a company doing RSI, and we are based in Beijing. And we just want to share some insights from our experience in this market, in this industry, and in this country. Let me change page. First of all, just in case somebody missed it, we are live translating the pitch and the talks into Chinese. So for the Chinese audience, they can scan the QR code on the left or type the URL in the browser. And for the Chinese audience that they are in overseas, for better experience, they can scan the QR code on the right side. 如果有中国观众，他们需要听东川翻译中文东传，麻烦你们扫描左边的二维码。如果你们在国内，如果你们在国外，你们可以扫描右边的二维码。Also, I just want to say that today we did some upgrades, and we have seen some audience in the WeChat group that they have some challenges. I want to really apologize for this audience. We're working hard to polish these new upgrades, so hopefully next time you won't have the experience of today. Seems some people had some challenges listening the translation. This is a little bit the agenda, what I want to talk today. First, about COVID-19 on APAC international event. Second, COVID-19 on the RSI in China. And finally, we're going to talk about Super ACADU RSI solution. Okay, so this is the first topic. I'm scrolling down. Okay, first, very sad news. We reached the 8 million infected all over the world. Actually, this screenshot was done like 3 days ago. Well, since the situation is I wouldn't say improving, maybe worsening, but seems the things are not clear yet how it's going to happen in the near future, and this impact definitely our industry. As you can see in this slide, like a few weeks ago, there was like research that the International Congress and Convention Association they did, and they found out that in APAC, around 50% of all the international events actually have been impacted. They have to do some changes in accordance to the situation. Based on my experience, I think it is more than that. But well, you can see how the COVID-19 is really impacted the industry, the events industry, for example. And here in the next slide, you can see how the COVID-19 impacted Acadu. As you can see, we started to do our business last year in March, we started. And then you can see end of the year, September, October, November. This is the amount of events that we were having. We were growing. Everything was fine. Everyone was happy. I was buying gifts to my wife. But suddenly in January, the coronavirus appeared. And then we still got some events because I remember it was the first week, second week, but then immediately the government didn't allow to do gatherings or to organize events, offline events in China. So February, we got 0 events, offline events, March 0, April. So yeah, we got impacted by the coronavirus, especially when we were focusing in offline events and suddenly all the offline events were canceled. And so let's go now a little bit about the RSI in China. So one thing that happened is that when the events got canceled, obviously we went back to our clients to ask, how is this situation? What are you gonna do? What happened with this event that you were planning to do next month or in 2 months, in 3 months? And at the beginning, I just want to share the experience. What happened to us in the market here? So many event organizers, they didn't know. They say, let's observe what happened. Some may thinking this may finish soon and we can schedule, just change the time of the event. But then a month passed, and after a month, they realized that things are not getting good, that smooth, no? And sometimes in China, in some places, suddenly coronavirus appeared again. Like for example, even recently in Beijing, no? We are now locked down, and I'm from home, not from the office, because we have new cases. So then the event organizers, we noticed that they start to tell us, well, actually now we don't know what to do because it seems we cannot postpone more this event. We don't want to cancel it. So then becomes the time when explore new things. We realized all our clients were exploring what they can do. And finally, what it come out was the online events. So many of our clients start to organize online events. And now is what Acadu is mainly doing. We're translating online events, like for example, the wine of today. Now, translating online events is very different comparing with offline events. And I want to share here some points. For example, we noticed that now in these last couple of months, it has increased a lot the interest in remote simultaneous interpretation from event organizers, from LSP, language service providers, translation companies, and from interpreters. Sometimes we have a group of interpreters or from schools, from universities that they want to test our remote simultaneous interpretation solution. Sometimes we have translation companies that they want to do a test, a demo. And sometimes, and many times, we have event organizers that want to know how can they bring remote interpretation to their online events. So this is a big change, because I would say daily, we're doing at least a couple of tests with whether event organizers, translation companies, or interpreters. This is a big change. Then change number 2 is more online events. So now we are having, if we compare online versus offline, last year we were focusing offline events. Now we are having much more online events than before. And this is due to point number 3, for example, the frequency that the event organizers hold or organize online events has increased a lot. For example, we had some clients that they organize 2 offline events per year, but suddenly when it is online, it's easier to organize. Then they are organizing twice every 2 months. So 1 event per month or 2 events every 3 months. So the frequency have increased actually. Number 4, one big difference that we have noticed also comparing the current situation, online events versus offline events, is that the audience. Now with online events, we are reaching far much greater audience than before. Yes, for example, in the last 2-3 months, just the last 2-3 months, we already reached 48 different countries. We had audience there. And we don't have channels or marketing in those countries. It's just somebody listens the content, they like it, and they forward to another person, and at the end we are in Sri Lanka, in India, and in other countries, people listening to the content, what is happening in China. People is interested, which is good, I like it. Point number 5 is the event duration. Yeah, that is also interesting. All the events that we were holding before, offline events, they used to last 2 days, 3 days, full day. Maybe the shortest one was half day. But now with online events, up to 2 hours. Around 2 hours now is the duration of the event. For example, even today we booked interpreters for 2 hours. So the duration have decreased, and of course, since Acadu, we are a platform that we charge per hour, revenue has decreased as well per event. But luckily, the volume have increased a lot. And finally, a big change also that we have noticed comparing online versus offline is the operation cost. In the past, when we had this offline event in a congress, in a hotel, we always had to arrange a person to go to the venue to collect the high quality audio of the speakers from the audio equipment and loop it into the laptop to stream it to the interpreters. And this is one thing that was a must. And now we don't need to do that anymore because everything is online and we just can forward the audio like I'm doing right now and forwarding to the interpreters. Also in the past, there was another pain point was the internet. You have a conference of 2,000 people, 1,000 people, and sometimes everyone using internet, then maybe the signal is not stable. And how to stream the high quality audio in a stable way to the interpreters. So you always had to find a partner to give you good internet or have your specific special super router, or you had to use the Ethernet cable of the venue of the hotel. No? We always have to consider all these things with offline events. Now with online events, this is not a problem anymore. So yeah, this is a little bit, just to let you know, from our point of view, the difference that we have noticed between online event and offline event. And of course, we're doing online because COVID-19 doesn't allow us to do offline anymore. So now you understand a little bit the change. Yeah, this is data about ourselves. So in the dark blue, you can see the offline events. In the light blue, you can see the online events that we are doing. We immediately, very fast, already catch up with the number of events we were doing before. And based on the last 2 weeks, we are going to get much more on June than in May, that's for sure. So the volume is increasing, That is good, actually. And here a little bit about what have we seen, for example, in China from the LSPs, translation companies. We have seen some translation companies doing partnerships with RSI platforms. For example, Transcend, we saw partnering with Kudo. Why Kudo? I think Acadu can do better. No. Kudo is a good company. So Transcend partner with Kudo. Then Talking China also is a good translation company. They partner with Inyo. Inyo is also a Chinese local remote simultaneous interpretation platform. So they are doing partnerships. Also, we have seen some translation companies doing their own RSI. They didn't have before, but now they have it. For example, Youdao, they have their own RSI. Also, Landelion, they decided to do their own RSI. And finally, we have seen also some translation companies using third-party software, like purchasing many Zoom accounts, maybe business accounts, and then try to give to the clients the account so they can get the interpretation through the Zoom theater. So this is a little bit things that we have observed in the market. Just wanted to share with you. And And then, if you allow me, I would like to go a little bit more deep about Acadu. So you can see the complete change from that we have done from last year to this year. In 2019, we started doing remote simultaneous interpretation for offline events. This is one event that we did last December. It was Audi. He's Li Kaifu. And so we were focused mainly on this type of events. As you can see here in the big screen, in the top left and bottom right, you can see our QR code in the big screen so the audience can scan and listen to the translation. And then, as I explained before, everything went down to zero due to the COVID-19. And then we adapted, we follow our clients, we saw how the market behaves. So then we went online with translating online events, webinar, and video conferences. In our case, we don't have, currently we don't have the interest that the conferences happen within Acadu. We are more trying to embed ourselves with Zoom, WebEx, BlueJeans, and all of these platforms, because we realize many of the clients are already very attached with certain softwares. So we allow them to keep using them, and then we make sure that we can translate the content and share with the audience. Here, this is a little bit of the platforms that our clients are using and that we are translating. You can see international platforms and then mainland China platforms. Notice that in China, they use some international platforms, like for example, Microsoft Teams. We have seen this a lot, WebEx, a lot as well, and Zoom, of course. These three are used in China quite often, actually. But there are also local softwares that are also very good and very interesting that our clients, they use. For example, you can see my mouse. This is Tenshun Hui, is Tencent Meeting. Actually, I think today there was actually a couple of events they were using Tencent Hui. Also, Feishu, the one here. Xiaowatong, also we have done many events in Xiaowatong. It's another streaming platform. I never heard these names outside of China, so maybe foreigners cannot, it's the first time you hear these names, but just to let you know, there are actually local players.
Alvaro, I'm giving you 2 minutes to wrap things up.
1 minute is enough for me.
Okay.
So to finish, this is a little bit about the audience, as I mentioned, how interesting it is. Now we have professors from Cambridge talking, and they have 1,500 unique users listening to the translation. I think it's beautiful that all this content give it to people and they can learn. And this is what I mentioned. Last 3 months, we got these 48 countries. Also, this is very surprising, but also I think it's very good to see so many events we're having in China. They are online, but the organizer is maybe Chinese or Chinese organization, and how so many foreign audience that are interested to learn about the content. I think it's beautiful. And this is about our mission. In Acadu, we dream to build a platform that stream content in different languages. And because we have a vision, in Acadu, we believe everyone has the right to learn no matter the language they speak. So that's why we're always very happy to be able to stream content and translate it in different languages, and then through the analytics, see the location of the users and how long they are listening. I think it's very interesting. That's it from my side. I want to say thank you, GOAP. Thank you, Women in Location, for giving Acadu this opportunity today to do a presentation and also to translate for the Chinese audience. That's it.
Thank you very much, Alvaro. And based on your presentation, it's really interesting to see how fast it shifted from offline interpretation to online. And of course, how fast Acadu was able to adapt to that abrupt change brought to us by the COVID-19. So thank you very much for that presentation. And we would like to ask you to stand by later for a very quick Q&A. And if anyone else has a question, feel free to send them in. So from simultaneous remote interpretation, we now go to video remote interpreting via Boost Lingo to be presented to us by Dieter. Dieter, can you hear me? Can you unmute yourself?
I can indeed. Hello, everyone.
Okay. You may now
Everyone's sitting
start
here
your
I'm here at
presentation.
the beach enjoying some nice sunny weather.
Oh. That's nice.
So I am not able to share my screen here. What's going on? Oh, here we go. Zoom. Okay. Hopefully this will work.
Glad to see Australia is now on fire in the background.
Yeah. Here we go. And I think that's what I do here. Okay, very good. Let me know if you can see the presentation here.
Yep, you can see it now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, GOAP and Women in Localization, and of course, everybody, all the speakers today. Fantastic presentations, really enjoying them. And thank you for the 100+ folks that have joined us in this presentation today. Exciting to get an opportunity to talk about Boostlingo and even broader on the opportunities that exist out there in the remote interpreting world. I guess I do that. How does this work? Okay, here we go. Just a little bit about Boostlingo. We were founded in January 2016, 3 employees based in San Francisco, California. I'm actually based in a little north of Sydney in New South Wales in Australia, but I split my time about 60-40, 70-30 between here and the Bay Area. We have offices throughout the US and a couple of sales offices in Europe and in the Philippines. 28 employees now. And at the moment, we offer our services to about 350 language service agencies globally who use the Boostlingo platform to deliver consecutive interpreting. I think that's an important differentiation. We are not an RSI platform. We are an interpretation management system, and the focus is on consecutive interpreting. So whenever we get RSI leads, we're very happy to share with our good friends at Kudo and Akadu. And I absolutely agree, Alvaro, that I've seen such a large number of inbounds on RSI. It's been pretty amazing. So global footprint, we have servers set up in 5 continents at this point. We leverage the Amazon Web Services data centers in the US, Canada, Europe, the UK, and then Australia serves the Asia Pacific region. About 1,000 end user clients out there at the moment. 50% of that is focused on healthcare, and the rest sort of distributed across things like legal, manufacturing, finance, insurance, various sectors of tourism, but really across a lot of different sectors and industries. So I've yet to meet a business that doesn't have a need for interpreting. So over 8,000 active interpreter users. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And probably about 500,000 requester users in our system at this point. So we've grown pretty dramatically over the last 4 years. Our vision, our purpose, our raison d'etre, really, if you ask any Boosty, anybody at the Boostlingo offices, is, we get excited about enabling language for people in ways that improve the quality of their life. We really believe firmly that you can't treat a patient if you can't communicate with them, and everybody has a right to have access to language support. So we get very excited that we have the technology, the capabilities now to do this, and there really are no barriers to bring these kinds of services on a global scale. What is Boostlingo? So a lot of people ask, well, so I don't get it. What is it? It's a platform. It's a SaaS, software as a service. Yep, it's all of those. It's a cloud-based software application that combines the interpretation communication infrastructure, so delivering video remote interpreting and telephonic interpreting. It's also an interpreting management platform and system with all the sort of back end that you would expect with, the end-to-end process of managing your business if you're an agency or an organization that supports language services. So, that includes on-site scheduling, coordination of resources, managing your teams, your labor pools. We'll just go down. Sorry. And effectively, all the components that you would use to run an interpreting business. We took the idea of the translation management system when we started to look at this space, and we said, you know what? There's certainly tons of TMSs out there. There are lots of good platforms out there in that space. We don't need to build another machine translation technology, but the area that we saw that was really underserved was in the spoken word area, and we thought, this is really where we can bring some good, Silicon Valley DNA to bring a better user experience for interpretation. Very proud of the fact that in 4 short years, we've become one of the top 5 providers in the telehealth and language space. It's when we look at the company that we keep there, most of the folks that we bump up against are 100 million and billion plus dollar organizations, and then there's little old us, and that makes us very excited about where we are today. When we say a platform unified, what does that mean? It means that we took a really hard look at all the important components that you would need, including automation, the capability to customize, off the shelf, out of the box. We know that 80% of the product will probably suit your needs, but then there's that 20% blood, sweat, and tears where you need customization, you need certain integration tools, you need to accommodate your specific workflow and processes in place. We felt that there needed to be access to a global pool of interpreters out there. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but the advent of web real-time communications really, a technology that when you think about it, really was in its infancy even 6-7 years ago, really opened up the possibilities for a product like this. And it really allowed us to look at the different ways that we could bring very, very quickly. The immediacy was the most important thing, getting access to language as quickly as possible. And WebRTC really kind of changed the playbook there on that, and leveled the playing field a little bit for the language services industry. Real-time insights into the product. We feel that it's important to know what's going on. Analytics are built into the product. We're very, very bullish on regulatory compliance. I think that's something that we touched on earlier today, and it's going to increase with anybody engaged in the business of interpreting and language services is going to definitely see a serious uptick and interest in what you are doing in terms of compliance. And I couldn't underscore that more, that it matters. At the moment, COVID-19, some of the rules have been relaxed a little bit, but privacy and security and high availability, these are all things that consumers, customers, corporations, enterprise across the board care about very deeply. So labor pool management, when we built the system, we decided we never want to be a service agency. We never want to cannibalize our channel, which is language service agencies. We want to provide the opportunity for agencies to use their own interpreters. And that was a very, very important component of the Boostlingo roadmap, is what kind of logistics can we build to allow you to work with interpreters all over the world. 70+% of interpreters are freelance in nature. The rest work in call centers or work in industry, but 70% of the interpreters out there are in a freelance world. No one unified across one particular tool set, and using everything under the sun, Skype, Zoom, what have you. Nothing that was really dedicated to serve the remote interpreter profession. So really looked hard at what tools we could bring to play in the web and mobile space. interpreters. And then we also believe very strongly in the integration in the API economy that is growing, and being able to connect with other platforms and technologies out there. This is really the wave of the future, and it's something that's always at the top of our minds. How can we streamline workflow so that you can work in your translation world today, right now, and then pivot, toggle over to your interpretation world, and then go back to your software localization world? How can we streamline and make that more efficient for agencies out there? Very, very quickly, I'll run through some of the areas of the platform. I mentioned workflow automation and customization, scheduling, appointment tracking, contact management. It is a robust vendor management tool to manage all of your internal and external resources. We have billing and invoicing set up in the system. You can natively integrate with QuickBooks. One of the things that we're most proud of course, is our internal call routing logic. You can use your interpreters. You can connect to other call centers. You can use our pool of interpreters. We're very agnostic in this respect. We just hope that you're able to get interpreters to your end users as quickly as possible. Of course, on-demand and scheduled OPI and VRI. Conference calling, we have web conferencing, 4- or 5-way video conferencing tools as well through BoostLink. And we will, towards the end of July, we'll be fully integrated with Zoom in terms of consecutive interpreting integration with Zoom. And all that, and you can white label it as well. We just want to be the intel inside. Every product that we release allows you to customize and brand it according to your particular go-to-market strategies. Really quickly on the BoostLink Professional Interpreter Network, I know there's some interpreters on this call today might be interested about this. When we first started this, a lot of agencies came up to us and said, we've got like 25 Spanish medical interpreters. We just got this RFP and I need to scale up. Can you get anybody for us? And our position was, well, we don't really want to get into the service piece of it. What is the answer here? What we decided to do was partner initially with pros.com, who you're probably all familiar with, and a number of ASL organizations and a few language companies to build this pool of interpreters, which is now expanded to 8,000 plus interpreters that know how to use BoostLingo, know how to do video remote interpreting and telephonic interpreting, understand the protocols and even the connectivity and bandwidth speeds and everything that it takes to have a successful remote interpreting session. And at this point for telephonic, we support 300 plus languages. For VRI, at the moment, US business hours, the top 35 languages. Again, average response time around 9 or 10 seconds. Never see anything really go over 20 to 30 seconds for any language that we support. And that's BoostLingo. What I want to talk about is the market and a lot of folks went from 60 to 0 very, very quickly, especially those that were doing on-site interpreting, and needed to pivot really quickly, and also needed to bring customers over the line into this remote world. The technology was always there. It's just this has now become the new normal, and folks are, I think, we're pleasantly surprised to see that, it's not that hard. Rolling out a remote interpreting solution for my end users, it's pretty easy. And so the good news is really that, there is the technology and there's the support out there to help your end users get their on-site situations to a virtual world. What did we see specifically at BoostLingo? Well, in the last 90 days, we have seen an increase of over 350% in inbounds that come in through our website and through social media channels. Caught us off guard a little bit at the beginning, but it is something that no one could have ever anticipated. And we're very grateful and thankful that some of the features and functions that we thought about, and a lot of them, we thought about them during Hurricane Harvey and some of the other disasters that hit the fires. A lot of these things sort of instructed us into, these features and functions are priorities, because even access to language makes your life incrementally better if you can just have someone, speak to you. So, these technologies in the RSI space and in our sector, we were ready for this. So it's comforting to know that we were able to prepare for it. A lot of obviously interpreters who were doing on-site needed to figure out how to pivot to the remote interpreting world. So we always try to help our colleagues in the interpreting space. We're very I would invite everyone to check out Cafe Lingo. We're always posting job tips and links to career development. We definitely believe in the interpreter, and without interpreters, none of this would matter, really.
Excuse me, Dieter, can I cut off for a minute? I'll give you two more minutes to wrap things up.
Didn't I have 7? I'm kidding. Okay, I'll go very, very quickly. Let's look at some of the markets out there. I think this was important to folks. What are we seeing out there? Well, North America, immigration-based, access to public and services and legal interpreting, healthcare interpreting, all really a compliance market. Similarly, here in Australia, it's growing. Community interpreting is growing in Europe. Certainly conference and UN style interpreting is very large in the UK and Europe, and in Asia is still very much the Wild West. When we look at the US market, a $50 billion market scaling to $56 billion by 2022. The North American market comprises 40% of that global market, right? But that's 1.2 billion. It's estimated to be, I think, a $7.6 billion market. And you got to ask yourself, what if I'm working in the Asia Pacific region? This is a very interesting graphic, right? Because the top providers out there comprise 33% of the industry revenue. So there's $5 billion out there, highly fragmented, and among folks available for anybody that is makes a concerted effort to go after this kind of business. Asia Pacific region, again, as I said, it's the Wild West a little bit, although it's the East technically. Things like accreditation, certification, compliance, regulation, slowly coming up. The healthcare space is slowly waking up to this as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for those of you that are growing your interpretation business in this region to really reach out and hit a lot of opportunity in the healthcare, public government sectors. I grabbed this slide from the latest NIMSY report that just came out. I encourage everyone to go out and check it out. It's a fantastic report. I think people I've had a lot of people ask me where to place the bets, especially in this region. And so I don't think you can ever rule out healthcare. I think you always have to always focus on that. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. Immigration, legal, sign language, these are areas I would focus on. Defense, very, very challenging to get into, but if you can get in there, it's great. Certainly for RSI industry, I think it would be good. The events and conference industry, definitely RSI, big opportunities there. And of course, government, public services, tons of business there. But if I was going to place bets, I would say healthcare and the justice system, and probably look at some specialty areas as well, like sign language or immigration. And the good news is it's never been easier to do it. Boost Lingo is device agnostic. There's tons of great technologies out there. Analog landlines, iPhones, smartphones, iPads, hybrid devices. We have Frank Wee on the webinar today. Frank from Lingolet. These are hybrid devices that have transcription and machine interpretation capabilities. And you can also get in touch with a live interpreter if you need to. Definitely recommend checking that out. And of course, at the top end, organizations that have laptops, desktop PCs, anything that's browser-based, as long as it's a WebRTC-enabled browser, you can have an interpreter. Wow. I'm going to exhale now. I encourage everyone to email me if you have any questions, and happy to take those offline. And really, thank you everyone for letting me present today, and excited to hear about new adventures in remote interpreting from everybody on the webinar today.
Thank you very much, Dieter.
I'll hand it back over.
Last part almost sounded like a rap.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and please stand by for a few moments for the Q&A part. So I think we are already almost at the last stretch of our online conference, and of course, the last but definitely not the least, presentation for the future of multilingual meetings by Michelle from Kudo. So Michelle, can you please unmute yourself and
say hi?
Yeah.
Yes. Hello.
Say hi to
everyone.
everyone.
Hi. How are you?
I think everyone else is still having a good time. Still have 95 participants. So the floor is open and it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to share my screen, which I need to go into presentation mode, and I will just need, Shelly, if you can nod or give me a thumbs up if you can see it. Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you. Thank you very much. So hello, ladies, gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. And of course, thank you to GOAP, to Women in Localization, and to our interpreters from Akaru, and to Alvaro for making it happen. The title of my presentation is The Future of Multilingual Meetings, in person, online, or hybrid. So last May, this is more, and I think that the difference in between my presentation and what I've seen so far is that I am actually a little bit new, I would say, to Kudo. You will hear about it. So I would like to start with where I was when I started working on this presentation. It is a little bit difficult to kind of have a magic ball where you can see the future. So I was just thinking about that last weekend, and then my husband, he was watching a soccer match. This is the Bundesliga, the German football league, which is one of the first or the first league that actually opens up for football. And he was watching this match, and I don't know if you have watched any of them, but there is no public. There is no chanting, there is no yelling, there is no stadium sound, and of course there is no money on ticket sales. And then he looked at me and he said, it's like watching an amateurs match. And then it just got me thinking, like, how do we stay in the event industry? How do we keep on hosting multilingual events without looking like amateurs? So then I started doing some research, and then I found these specific numbers. So this is from March of this year. And then at that point, 90% of event professionals saw that some or most of their business was gone. Then 2.75 were left unemployed, and only 5% were minimally impacted. So we can only assume that the situation is a little bit more complicated now, months after, with a second wave maybe coming, with more lockdowns, and then of course with event planners seeing their business mostly gone. So I think that, at least for now, the only option for events happening this year is to pivot to virtual, so that the different industries can still keep some of that momentum going. So so far for today, we have talked about disaster recovery and remote working and project management, and I think that my colleagues here, they have already presented some solutions. So now I would like to introduce myself. So this is me at age 21. So in 2005, and this is at the UNESCO office in Cuba. And you can tell this is a very old picture, not because of I look like a baby, but because of the size of that laptop. So I started working on event organization and on and with international organizations from a very young age. So yeah, my very first office job was with the UN when I was 20, and then after that, I have been always kind of like passionate about languages, about understanding other cultures, and really about bringing people together so that you can make things happen. And I know from, especially from the time that I worked with IUCN, which was a work in conservation, I know from there that when you put the right people together in the right place, you can make great things happen, definitely. So today, I have delivered meetings and conference services, big and small, in 4 continents, and so far 17 countries, and hopefully we'll keep that going. So going back to the story I was telling you at the beginning, when my husband was watching this empty stadium, and that is exactly what those matches look like right now. I was just thinking about how to find a solution for knowing where to go, and I think that just before I started with Kudo, it was kind of a rough time for me as an event manager. And I imagine that for some of you, and if you are here and you are trying to find solutions, then maybe you will understand where I am coming from. This is not the easiest time for everybody. But then somehow it just magically happened that when I was trying to find a solution for my job before Kudo so that they could pivot to virtual, then Kudo phoned me. And this part of the story is quite funny because I knew the company that I was working for was going to let me go. I was very sure about that. I was an event manager who had to postpone or cancel all of the events that I had for the year. So it's kind of similar to what happened to Alvaro. All of a sudden you have nothing, absolutely nothing. So I kind of saw it going. And then just randomly one day, I got contacted by a person I had worked with in the past. And this is Media Vision, which is one of Kudo's partner organizations. And they had given interpretation services to one of the large congresses I had worked in the past. And they just said, well, we're looking to expand our business in Europe, and we wanted to see if you were interested. And I went to a daily demo, a Kudo daily demo, and all of a sudden it's like there is this new world opening up for me. And it's a job where I can really match my passion for languages with this high-level, multilingual event organization. And this is all happening in the middle of a world pandemic, which is which is crazy. But I guess the reason why I wanted to tell you my story before I even started with Kudo is because I think that sometimes it does happen that if you are at the right place at the right time, things may happen. And I believe that really when you are in difficult situations is when most of the best opportunities really come from. So let me tell you about Kudo now that you know about me. So Kudo is a language as a service platform to facilitate multilingual meetings online and offline. So we provide a complete solution that includes a state-of-the-art technology, high quality, human-powered language support, AKA interpretation. And we can deliver these interpretation services remotely or on-site. So Kudo basically allows you to host your meetings or to attend meetings from any computer or smart device connected to the internet and on any language that you speak. Of course, this means that we have also seen in Kudo a very high level of an increase on the number of meetings that we are hosting. And I will show you that in a minute. Then this is a little bit about the products and the services. And the one that I find the most interesting one is this picture in the center when we are talking about multilingual live events. So what we have is, at Kudo, we have the opportunity to kind of mix and match, and you can have people attending a live event, and then they can connect from their phones. They use their own phone, their own headphones. They go into the app, they can select the language, and then they can listen to the interpretation. That also means if you are from your house, you can also listen to the interpretation, but especially if you are thinking about a hybrid meeting, and also you are thinking about what the world after coronavirus will be, where I imagine nobody will like to be touching the receivers, and plus if you work in interpretation, you know, receivers, people will go to the hotel with that receiver in their backpack. It happens a lot. So that is a very good solution from a technical point of view, but also from a practical point of view. I believe that I believe it's brilliant. So this is the number of meetings hosted in Kudo. And I have to apologize for that terrible color there. I tried to fix it, but I couldn't. So as you can tell, at the very beginning, you have the number of meetings hosted in Kudo by June 2019. And then we were in between 50 and 100, more or less, until March this year. So if you keep on looking, this is only from March to May. But then in May, we had a total of 524 meetings hosted in Kudo. So I guess, yes, everybody is pivoting to virtual events. And we are really happy to be one of those solutions. Now, if your offices are already open, which I think that is not the case for many of us right now, then this is more or less what a hybrid meeting will look like when it is on Kudo. So basically, you can have the presenter on site. You have your you have your interpretation booths with your interpreters, and then you can have all of your attendees, whether they are from their houses on a computer, they can be on a mobile, on a train somewhere, they can also be on the meeting room. And there are ways to do hybrid meetings. This is the most simple one. We have some others where we can have interpreters on site and off site too. So that also works. Now, of course, talking about Kudo is not the same as really experiencing it. So what I would like to do is to invite you to come to one of our daily demos. They happen every day, they are daily. And right this week, we have started hosting them a little bit earlier in Europe so that we can catch up with Asia. And this is part of one of these initiatives that I brought, so that we can actually get a little bit more people from Asia, and well, from Europe. We do have more clients than I thought we did. So I have more work than I thought I would have. But please do come. I am usually on the one that is early, once a day, so you can see me there just saying silly things. Then the second thing that I would like to do before I wrap it up is to invite you to watch this video. And I see Shelly is coming, so I imagine that I have 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. So I'm just going to play this video. The interpreters don't have to interpret anything. And Shelly, if you can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it, please.
I think you need to spike the volume up.
I don't hear it. We don't hear it yet.
We don't hear it.
No. Okay. Well, yeah, sorry that didn't work. I was just giving it a try.
You can put the link on the chat.
Okay, yes, thank you, Shelly. So I will send you that. So this is one of our success stories. So this is the founder of Facebook, which I guess almost everybody knows who he is. And what you will see on this video is basically the freedom that you get when you're using Kudo as your main platform, and how you can just basically go and change from one language to the other. This is one of the largest ones we had. We had more than 1,000 viewers and 14 simultaneous interpreters. So those are the two things I wanted to share with you before I wrap it up. So the answer to the question, so that I can finish my presentation: the future of multilingual meetings. Is it in person, online, hybrid? I know that things will go back to normal, right? We are not going to be living our lives on an online environment for the rest of our lives. The schools will open again, and then the kids will go to school. Offices will open again. You will have coffee with your favorite colleague. I may be able to finally host my meeting, my wedding, which got postponed this year. Speaking of rough times, things will go back to normal. But there is one thing that I truly believe will not really go back to normal, and that is hosting very large events in person as we did before. I really believe that hybrid meetings are here to stay. Maybe it's going to take another, let's say, I think for at least the next 10 years. If people can not travel and not go to meetings, and this happened to me last year at work. I will travel from Switzerland to Seoul or to Tokyo for 15 hours, which in the end is 1 day. By the time you leave, you're like from door to door, to go to 2 days of meetings and then go back for another day. So you spend so much time traveling when you can have a meeting like this, and you can meet with the people, you can take your notes, you can make recordings, and you can rewatch the whole thing if you missed a part. It is brilliant. So I really believe that it is hybrid, and as some of our staff, people like all of us right now, as some of this workforce starts becoming younger and younger, and ourselves, we get older and older, I do think that working from home and being truly online is going to be a thing. And if you ask anyone who is 20 or less, they are loving working from home. They are loving going to school from home and staying on comfy pants. So thank you very much. I will share these links also on the Slack and the Messenger, so you can contact me. And I will share also the link to the daily demos. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Michelle. And don't forget to share the link of that video you have here on the Zoom chat. So
I'll do
thank
that
you.
right away.
Thank you very much. And before we proceed to the Q&A portion, Steve, can you pull up the last poll, the result of the poll we had earlier? Okay, there. You can, for everyone to see, some of them have been significantly affected by the COVID-19. And then on the second question, you also have a mix of answer. So most the one that got the highest percentage is considering a greater percentage of remote workers. So basically it's gonna become a hybrid, at least for this group of audience here. That's what they are considering. So and we have a last poll for you guys. Steve, can you help me out with that? Okay. So there. So the last poll is actually a survey on what other events would you like to see, either hosted by, of course, GoAP. So it could be virtual networking, unconference, leadership roundtables, tech showcase, mergers and acquisition forums, and of course, masterclass. So you can click on which type of event would you like to see in the near future. Okay, we'll give it another 30 seconds. Again, we encourage everyone to drop in your question. I have here one very interesting question, but the person who asked the question is no longer here, but we'll try to answer that. So may I request all our speakers to please feel free to unmute yourselves and join in our question and answer. So I guess we'll give this question a go. It's a question for Steve, but I'd like also to hear from Sarah and Gloria on what they think about this question. So the question says, with a world with no employees, how can you ensure that the rights of non-employees are upheld? And in turn, how can we also ensure compliance of the employees given that they are remote? So I think let's start off with Steve.
Sure. The person who posed the question, Laura, had to leave, but she actually just messaged me on LinkedIn too, asked me to get back to her. So she really wants her question answered. I think that we're definitely seeing as the world is moving into sort of the gig economy and the gig workers, if you will. We're also, I think, seeing a new labor revolution as well, right? So contractors without a formal employer are not without rights. So and of course, my title, the end of the employee, is meant to be provocative. You know, there will always be some employees, but I think the question is a legitimate one. In the U.S., in the language industry, that question is all the rage right now, right? With the lawsuit beginning with in California, when a trucking company, the drivers, took their employer, the drivers, the truck drivers are independent contractors. They took their employer, the trucking company, to court and won. And so that really effectively began a very big and hotly contested topic for the language industry, in which many states in the US are beginning to look at independent translators and interpreters as employees for the language companies. And of course, for the language company owners, this is a very, very scary thought, because for most of us, our model for the language companies, the model is built based on using independent contractors, right? I think the answer to that question really is going to depend on the jurisdiction, and in the U.S., which is the jurisdiction that I'm most familiar with, this began in California, but anything that is being done in California is being closely watched by other states. So I'll see if other speakers or actually anyone in the audience who have any thoughts on that. So we also would like to hear from the audience as well. So.
Sarah, anything you would like to add to that?
Sure. I mean, Steve said it really well. I'm not sure I have that much more to add, but it's very important to keep track of the jurisdiction in which you are located, the jurisdiction in which your company is located, the jurisdiction in which your freelance employees are located. It gets a bit complicated, but we're all used to that already. So it's even more important now that we're cognizant of how these regulations are going to affect our employees and our freelancers under this completely new circumstance. So it's really important to go back and look over those, look over all the legal documents and make sure that we're still protecting everyone and protecting ourselves and not letting anything slip through the cracks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to add to that? I actually have a question for the remote interpreting speakers. So given that there's a fast shift from offline to online interpreting, and we have a lot of freelance interpreter here, does that also change the dynamics of pooling on how you pull in your resources or interpreters? Is there any significant change or it's more of the same? So Dieter, would you like to answer that?
Sure. It really hasn't changed the model dramatically for us. In fact, if anything, it's ratcheted up the demand for professional, trained, proficient remote interpreters. I might throw a plug out for a book coming out at the end of the year called The Remote Interpreter on Cross-Cultural Communications print. Interpreters that are interested in that, evolving their careers in this area. There are lots of great things online for training. There are lots of resources to get you the skills that you need and understand, what it takes to be a professional online interpreter. And the demand is definitely increasing. Specializations, really important. Medical, you can't go wrong. Legal, can't go wrong. What is going to be interesting is to see, in certain countries where you take a country like Australia, where they're, the certification process is very, very regimented, really good, really strong. U.S. is pretty good too. We have national accreditation organizations. Countries in the Asian regions and Asia Pacific, the expectations are going to be different country to country, but I think that there'll be continued interest to have. It's a false economy to have, someone who's bilingual jump on a call, right? That's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to become a race to the bottom in the interpretation space. I think the translation space was a little more crazy that way. We see how important it is to have good quality professional interpreting, and physicians see it, lawyers see it, they understand. Initially, I think they're enticed by the cost savings by not having someone there, 9 to 5 sort of thing on site, only just in time sort of thing. But in addition, that's changed. But you know what? Now interpreters are getting more jobs across more agencies out there. The actual, as Alvaro was saying, things are now 2-hour meetings. That's great, but you know what? You might get 5 2-hour back-to-back meetings in a day. You log in at 8 a.m. and you log out at 5, 6 o'clock, and it's a hustle as well, right? So also important for interpreters to take care of themselves, because you can easily be sitting in front of a Zoom screen or some kind of remote interpreting screen for 8 hours, and you need to think about the health implications of that as well. Take time off, have a coffee, go for a walk your dog.
Michelle, would you like to add to that?
Well, I think from our side, we are right on with Dieter's. Like in our case, what we have seen is a lot more interpreters coming to us saying that they want to be Kudo certified and they want to make part of the interpreters pool that we have. The one thing I have noticed, but I think this is, it's related to interpretation, and it is, for some reason, and we have been fighting a little bit with the participants who come to the meetings, because for some reason they believe that because you are on an online environment, everything is online. So we have been trying to showcase that this is human interpretation services. They have to go to university to become interpreters, and then they take a short course so they can be Kudo certified and they know how to use our platform. But I think that is the only thing that I feel that has changed a little bit is the fact that people, the participants, they cannot see the interpreters as they did when you walk into a meeting room and you have the booths and you know that they are there. So maybe we have been kind of like educating the participants a little bit more about that, and even doing little things like always reminding the speakers to just slow down a little bit. So it's little things like that, but other than that, it's not a huge shift, I would say.
Alvaro, any thoughts would you like to share to the team from Akadu?
Um, yeah, we also noticed the supply of interpreters that increased because now we have not only from China, from many countries contacting us to be Akadu interpreters. So I guess same as Buslingo and Kudo, for us now it's about filtering because you want to keep good quality. Interpreters, as every profession, there are the ones that have very good quality, some others that maybe need to train themselves, and still there is room for improvement. That's why in Akadu, you can see we have different levels. We have expert level of interpreters, we have advanced level, and we have standard level. And then we always try to classify them. Based on what? In Akadu is not only a curriculum, doesn't mean everything. So curriculum, the years of experience, this means a percentage of your final score, then the education background, then the referral is very important. If a senior interpreter recommends another senior interpreter, we evaluate a lot. It's also not 100% because maybe they are trying to make you a favor, no, try to help another friend interpreter, but we consider it, especially if they are already Akadu expert interpreters, because we trust them. And then also, finally, we also do a test. We almost all the interpreters that come to Akadu, we always throw them from our servers 15 minutes audio, and we ask them to interpret. Of course, some of them doesn't want because maybe they're already too expert, too seniors, but it's okay. Some others they won't, and based on that, we rate them. I think in interpretation, quality is very important. That's why we platforms need to be able to filter correctly, also in a fair way, in a transparent way as well. That's what we are trying in Akadu.
Thank you very much. So I guess I'll throw in that $1 million question earlier. I hope I could phrase it the way Berlin did. But after this whole COVID situation, so basically, I think from what I've heard earlier is that where does it leave us as an industry, as a language service provider, both translation and interpretation. Did I phrase it right, Steve?
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think Berlin's question is, what do we do during COVID, and what do we do afterwards, right?
After.
In simple terms.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I would say the first thing that you should do is do not go and learn how to bake bread. I think at the beginning of coronavirus, everybody thought that this was going to be 1 month, 2 months in confinement, and then we're going to go back to the world and we're going to go back to normal. So I'm going to use this time to learn how to bake. And then I will clean my closet, and then I will download an app and I will learn a new language. right? Like, I think that it was almost in any country in the world, nobody really thought we're going to be in coronavirus and in confinement for so many months, right? At least I know the Western world, we were not expecting it. So I from my experience, I would say if you can find a middle ground in between keeping what you know already, your professional background, and just bring that into something new, into something a little bit more virtual, I think that that is where the money is going to be for some time.
I'm
Okay.
going to, go ahead, Sarah, go ahead.
Sarah, go ahead.
First of all, I want to come out in support of baking bread and learning to bake bread. Uh, I thought that was so funny that everyone was doing that. But I guess my advice would be to use any extra time that you have that you're not, waiting for your lost baggage or sleeping off the jet lag. Use that to educate yourself, I would say, because now there's so many ways, so many things that you can learn online that can, if you're a freelancer, you can add services, or if you're a company owner, you can expand your horizons. There's just so much that you can learn right now and take advantage of this time. The other thing that I would recommend is right now, unfortunately, a lot of people are getting laid off and a lot of people are leaving their companies in droves. And if you are in a position to be able to hire, now is a really good time to snap up some really talented people. So including people that are leaving jobs that maybe they're not translators already, but they're bilingual professionals in a certain vertical, like legal or patents. If your company works with a certain vertical, you should be keeping an eye on the companies that were formerly hiring you, keeping an eye on people that might be laid off from those companies and might be interested in a career switch. So hopefully, like Winston Churchill says, never waste a good crisis.
Yep.
I definitely firmly agree with that. So hopefully we can make the most of this time and give people that have been laid off an exciting new career opportunity.
That's a great point. Love it. We've seen exactly the same thing. The talent pool, unfortunately, folks are losing their jobs, but we are interviewing people and we were looking at resumes and talking to people that it's very, very hard to take a decision. You can only extend 1 or 2 jobs out there, and you've got to choose from a stack of folks that are, want them all on the team, So it is very challenging, particularly in the Bay Area and the Silicon Valley. We've seen this, a lot of talent out there. So the one thing I was going to say to interpreters and agencies out there that I always try to get on my soapbox on this: invest in the technology. And that means if you're an interpreter, invest in your laptop or your headset or your webcam. You are only as good as the last mile. And if you can, have technology that's not built 10 years ago, you're going to be doing yourself a big favor. The price of technology has reached, it's almost disposable at this point. You can do great WebRTC with a Chromebook. Don't think that you can trot out that PC running Windows 95, and think that you're going to be able to compete in that market. Go to Best Buy, ask Santa, get your studio set up properly.
Steve, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the quote from Winston Churchill from Sarah Maria. And I will also answer Berlin's question with a quote as well, right? Edward Deming, who is widely considered the father of the total quality management movement, had a quote that I'm going to paraphrase. It basically says that that it's not mandatory that all companies survive, right? Survival is not mandatory. And that's kind of the stark reality that some companies are not going to make it through each tough economic times, including this one. So, so the flip side of that is that those companies that are able to survive and then prosper in the long term are those that are agile and quick to change, adopt new technologies, as Theo pointed out, be able to react and adapt to the changing market conditions. So, and I think this goes for us as employees or contractors, or as knowledge workers too. It's not mandatory that if you don't change, you will be obsolete. So I'm kind of a globalist at heart, right? So the reality is that employers and companies will shift their strategies, change their cost structure to drive efficiency in their business. And I will give one practical example of how one company has gotten creative, just anecdotally. As I'm in sales, I'm in client-facing situations. So, I like interacting with people and, take clients out to lunch and dinner and so on and so forth, which obviously right now you can't do. And especially in those cities such as New York, where everything is shut down. So I was recently contacted by a company selling some software solution. And he offered me to go to a quote unquote lunch and learn, to take me out to lunch. Well, except, nobody can go out to lunch. So he's offering to buy me lunch through one of those app service. He's gonna order food delivery service for me, right? So I thought that was kind of innovative. So even though we can't go to a restaurant together, and he's still sort of offering that the next best equivalent, the virtual equivalent of a client-facing, the dining experience, right? So we will be sort of dining virtually. So I thought that was a nice little touch, right? That companies that salespeople, companies are trying to be creative to find new ways to interact with the customers in these tough economic times when you can't have in-person events. So I thought that was a good little tip that I may adopt myself, right? Sort of offering to take a client to a virtual lunch or a virtual dinner. So.
Thank you, Steve. I was wondering if Makis has any thoughts on that question of Berlin. Makis, are you still there? I think he's kind of idle right now. So I think it's already almost 5:30, and as much as we'd like to stay and discuss longer, and I know that everyone here has their job, and I know Steve it's already 5 a.m. there and still hasn't gotten any sleep, and it's nighttime somewhere. Oh, Makis is there. Makis, would you like anything to add to what has been said earlier as part of the disaster recovery?
Well, the only thing that I would like to add is that when crises strike, then it's when things get hectic, and all the things we neglected doing in the past or passed over just because we had something else to do rise up. Planning in general is a good thing to do, and you will evaluate during the crisis and after the crisis what you did wrong, what you did correctly, and replan again. It's a cycle, nothing else.
Thank you very much for that words. And here in our screen, it's showing the results of the poll. So basically, everyone wants some tech showcase and more of these virtual networking events, virtual cocktail, the partying, virtual party. So I think we can make something out of that. Our GoAP will come up with something for virtual networking and technological tech showcase. So on behalf of everyone on the GoAP, thank you very much for joining us here today. Thank you very much for all our speakers and for everyone who sent in their questions. And we can actually continue the discussion through our Slack, WeChat, and connect through LinkedIn that you've put in on the Slack channel. Steve, any parting words for this group? Again, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Yes, I want to again thank everyone, all the speakers, our sponsors, the interpreters. A big nod to them. It's very, very difficult to interpret in a remote environment. So thank you for the interpreters and Akadu for sponsoring the interpretation portion of this. We appreciate that. And the poll results here about everybody's interest in virtual networking. And we did an event, an online conference about a month ago. And the poll, we had the exact same questions. And the poll results were pretty much identical. People are starving for personal contact and for networking opportunities. And then the other thing that was also rated high was also on technology a month ago. So basically, people want more contact and people love technology. That's sort of the takeaway. And with that, I think some of us were kind of half talking, joking internally on Slack about kind of staying on and catching up, shooting the breeze, maybe over a drink. I'm debating whether to have a drink or breakfast. So
I wasn't joking. I was very, very serious.
So with that, we will formally end our online conference. And those of you who want to stay on for a few minutes and just chat and network a little bit, please feel free to stay on. I will stay on. And as I know, I know a few people will be as well. So thank you very much for joining, and we will see you at the next event, which will likely be a virtual networking event. So thank you.